good tinfoilers? Nautilus reporting for duty. It's time to talk silo theories. In the last silo video, we discussed the biggest silo theories that relate to what's going on outside the silo. This time it's a bit different because we're going to look inward and ask some questions about what's going on inside the silo. We're going to do our best to try to attempt to answer some very simple questions, or at the very least, we'll get some ideas to chew on until we get some real answers in the coming seasons. Number one, why are there so many silos and what could be going on inside of them? And what's the reason for having this many people living in silos while not aware of each other? Question number two, what's the deal with the door at the bottom of the silo? Why does it exist and where does it lead to? Number three, why do the people in the silo seem so complacent? This is a weird one to explain, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it later. Number four, is there something in the water? Are the silo citizens being drugged by the silo bosses? Number five, why are elevators not allowed in the silo? There's a lot to cover in this video, so I hope you've got your tinfoil handy. But before we begin, it's my obligation to warn you that there are spoilers and they're coming in hot. So if you're not caught up with the show and don't want anything ruined, now is your chance to hit the eject button before we take off. Save this video for later and come back when you're good and ready. As always, I'd like to shout out the channel patrons. I'm a big fan and I can't thank you enough for choosing to support the channel. Also check out the channel Discord. It's free to everyone and it's a great place to meet and chat with other fans of the shows that I cover. Links to both can be found in the descriptions if that sounds good to you. Alright, preamble out of the way, time to lace up those boots because it's time to dive. So by now you know the big reveal at the end of season 1, where Juliet gets a look at what's over the hill and we're shocked at the sight of multiple silos. I mean, there are a good amount of silos besides the one we've been in, and I think it's a good guess to assume that there are at least 18 and possibly more than that. The question then becomes, why would the founders need so many silos? The way I see it, and based on my research, there are two major options that present themselves that might explain things. The first idea is that the whole point really is just preservation. Yes, of course, this is the same story we've been told by the silo rulers, but it's a good reason to have so much in the way of redundancy. To the person or persons behind this design, this setup would naturally be a good way of ensuring that a catastrophic event doesn't take out the entire population. Another decent explanation that isn't too far from the first is that the whole setup is an experiment. The idea here is that each silo is different in some way, or perhaps some are part of a control group while others are not. Either way, the whole thing was designed to test humans' ability to survive or some other objective. Really simple, and it works. Either way, the silos seem like they were built to isolate their inhabitants from one another, seeing how they have no real way of reaching each other. Unless, of course, we're talking about that door at the bottom of the silo. Now, there are some interesting ideas about what this door is about. During my search for official information on the internets, I came across Rebecca Ferguson's response to the question about the door. Of course, she is the character Juliet, but she's also a producer on the show. It was more of an interesting video than informative, and that's no surprise given it's probably a massive spoiler for us to find out too soon. But in an interview with Collider, she said this: "Oh buddy, you're gonna have to see." That is such a good question. If I tell you, I'm gonna have to kill you. So you know we're stuck in that. There's a big door down there. I know we haven't activated the door without wanting to explore what the door might be. I'm just gonna leave it right there. So yeah, no spicy details, just more suspense and frustration. So we've got to take what we know about the show to make an educated guess. Now initially when I saw this part of the silo, I assumed that the water at the bottom of it was there because it was left over from the dig process. I thought a drill that large needs a lot of water to keep it cool. Maybe all this water that we're seeing is just reserve from that initial operation. The second half of the season, I started to have a new opinion that the water was there or is there to discourage Siloans from messing around with that door if they were to discover this area. Someone fill this place up with water. Now this is part of a theory that these doors lead to a common area that links all of the silos together, like a network of tunnels or a collection of interconnected hubs. Obviously, you don't build a door here unless you want people to use it for some reason, so the water probably wasn't part of the original blueprint. This came later, accidentally, or... Now the popular opinion is that whatever happened during the rebellion 140 years prior has something to do with why the water is there now. Now this does make me wonder if these doors, or if this door does indeed connect to the other silo. Doesn't that imply that there might have been contact or even normal communication between the silos at some point in the past? I mean, what are the chances that in all of the silos, assuming they all have a door, that not a single person finds and tries to use these doors? I guess what I'm asking is were these doors always meant to be a secret? It seems like the answer is no. So this calls another thing into question. Were the silos designed to be unaware of each other from the beginning? Or was this something that changed because of an event, like a rebellion? Now we can guess this is probably the case, but we can't say for sure because we don't have confirmation. But it's still something interesting to consider right now. And one of the major reveals in the first season was when our favorite IT guy and now mayor of Silo Town, Bernard, was not aware of the door at the bottom of the silo. Our boy Bernie has been the head honcho of the silo, and he didn't know about this big mysterious door. This not only speaks to Bernard not being the biggest of the big bosses, but he's probably just a cog or step on the ladder, somewhere down the chain of command. I say this because that's something he would know if he truly was top dog. The fact that nobody ever comes through this door, as far as we know, could imply that the other silos occupants don't know about their doors either. But you know who does know about this door? Juliet. And she's just been let loose. She's definitely going to investigate the other silos for sure. And she might tell them about the secrets she's uncovered. This is Bernard's worst nightmare as far as we can tell. And I can't help but think there is some kind of contingency planned in the event that something like this does happen. We'll have to wait until season 2 to find out. In a message to Jules, George mentions that the water at the bottom of the silo wasn't really a problem to deal with, indicating that he found a way around things. But we don't know exactly what that means yet. I'd be willing to bet money that most Siloans don't know how to swim because pools are resource and maintenance hungry, and a small capsule city like this that's built for long-term survival just wouldn't have the space for something like that. My guess is that maybe George figured out how to drain it, or he figured out how to swim to access the door. But I'm very curious to find out what's on the other side. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but we're not 100% sure if the doors are blocked because of the Great Rebellion events from 140 years ago. This could indicate that the rebellion might have been a multi-silo event, unless it only happened in our silo, Silo 18, and it was just sealed off from the rest to prevent whatever idea it was from spreading to the other silos. All right, so this one's a little touchy, but we're gonna get into this. So Siloans are not like us. Sure, they look like us, but they're very different as a result of their experiences. And I think this is an important thing to consider when judging their actions. I see some comments everywhere from time to time where people are griping about how unrealistic their responses are to certain situations. And I guess I'm here to defend the Siloans. One of the things that I think some viewers of the show don't put into consideration when they make these calculations is the element of time. 140 years is a very long time. If you're watching this video in 2024, then you'd have to go back to 1884 to go back 140 years. What was life like in 1884? Just off the top of your head. Hard to imagine, I bet, without doing a little research, unless you're a history buff. People had different views, beliefs, and outlooks back then. So it's hard to say how they should act in a certain situation compared to how we would. Now, these people down here in the silo, all of the people stuck in this underground city, have been under the watchful eye of the silo for generations. And the silo has done a thorough job of instilling a deep sense of fear about discussing anything related to the past or what's really going on in the silo. 140 years of stomping out dissent and silencing anyone who questions the system results in a society that has learned to go along with the approved story and maybe even start to believe it. A lot of people down here have lost their ability to think critically, and they have no leadership to be inspired by or stand behind, because the silo would put an end to anyone who stirs up trouble. This isn't a foreign concept, and I'm sure you can think of several current day examples. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that the average Siloan doesn't ask questions the way you or I would in these circumstances. They've had any notion of that kind of thinking eradicated from them for the most part. And they've gotten used to things being a certain way, whether they agree with it or not. They've come to accept their situation, and most are happy enough to not risk angering the silo and just living their lives. One of the greatest blessing-curse combos of our species is the ability to adapt to just about anything, for better or worse. It's easy to see how far removed they are from the events of the rebellion. It's got an almost mythical quality by the time we're introduced to it in the story. This is exactly why the characters we follow in the story are so important and so unusual. It's these people who give in to their need for knowledge and truth that stand out. People like Juliet, Allison, Gloria, George, and eventually Holston. Okay, so now let's talk about the water. Okay, so this one is based on a single line in a scene where we're told that Siloans are being drugged to make them forget the past, and that this drug is being administered secretly through the water supply. This is one of those ones where it could be something that was said out of pure paranoia and it's not true. We don't get any other information on this. There's no other clues that indicate that there is something in the water because it's never brought up again. So it's a little bit hard for me to bite on this one, but it's still plausible. Control is paramount down there. So any methods for surveillance or thought policing that are available, they're going to be used. Bernard and Sims have shown just how ruthless they will be when it comes to maintaining the status quo. We got the receipts. The silo women are lied to control who gets to have a kid. There's the augmented reality in the biosuit to trick people into thinking that the outside is some beautiful paradise. There are the cameras that are hidden everywhere, holidays that exist to distract people from scandals, and they also drug people to keep them quiet, like Gloria. There are limits on things like electronics, magnification, elevators. More on that in a minute. So yeah, this tracks. I don't think they'd have any qualms with spiking the punch. So it wouldn't surprise me if we find out later that this is really happening. But let's circle back to those elevators. So I wanted to tackle the question about why elevators aren't allowed to exist in the silo. For the longest time, this one baffled me because I couldn't imagine a good reason to force people to use a staircase in a 140 plus floor building. I bet the people of the silo have amazing calf muscles. So I was perusing the Reddits, as one does, and I came across a post asking about this very topic. One user gave a very simple explanation for it, and it's simply to control the movement of large groups of people. And I thought about it and I was like, you know, that does make sense. So the silo creators, aka the founders, were very much concerned with keeping order in the silo. And well, civil unrest is inconvenient and counterproductive to that goal. If there were, say, an uprising, a mass of disgruntled people from the mids or lowers that decided to grab their pitchforks and head up to the top to judicial, well, they'd have to figure out how to get there. And if they had elevators, they could do this whole thing a hell of a lot faster, rather than marching up dozens and dozens of staircases. It's probably a strategic, logistical hurdle for any would-be rebels to have to consider if they were to mount some kind of rebellion. An attack on the leadership of the silo would require a lot of stair climbing, and that puts the silo elite, like judicial, at a major advantage. Remember, tinfoilers, it's always easier to fight downhill than it is up. Ask the ancient Romans. Well, that's a wrap on Silo Theories number 3. Let me know some of your theories on the subject. I'm always looking for a reason to spotlight someone. I've got a few more theory videos planned for this show, as well as those character breakdowns that I promised. So be on the lookout. Notifications on this platform are sometimey. Thanks once again to the patrons, the regulars, and the awesome comments that you guys leave. I may not get to respond to everyone, but I definitely read them all. So thank you. Be safe out there, tinfoilers. Make somebody's day today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.